In this video, we'll walk you through how to thread your Highland 1501C, 1501C5, and multi-head embroidery machine. Threading your machine properly is essential to having good embroidery, as having an improper thread path can lead to excessive thread breaks, can lead to the machine not being able to make a stitch properly, as well as just poor stitching overall. Before we get into the fine details of threading, we first need to discuss the thread rack and how your thread spools are positioned on it, as they are numbered in a certain way. All of our machines are going to be threaded on your thread rack where the numbering goes from back to front. The only exception is going to be the 1501C, where thread number 1 is here in the front right corner. With number 1 right here, we're going to jump back to the back row for thread number 2, moving forward to 3, forward again to number 4, and then back to the back row for thread 5, 6, and so on, all the way over until you reach number 15 over here on the front left side of the thread rack. Once all your thread spools are positioned how you want them, we need to then discuss your thread tree, which is right above your thread rack, where you see several different rows of eyelets. Each one of your threads is going to move through a certain number of eyelets. The first row of thread is going to go straight up and through only 1 eyelet. Second row goes straight up and through 2 eyelets moving forward. And the third row is going to go up and through 3 eyelets as you move forward towards the rest of your machine. We always want to make sure that we don't cross up our thread, or that we don't have 2 colors of thread going through the same eyelet, as that's not only going to confuse you as the operator, but it's going to confuse the machine in a sense, as your machine's not going to sew properly. That's an example of having your machine threaded wrong. So we need to make sure and have that set up how we want it. Now we're going to thread needle number 2 on our machine, and to do that I'm going to start back here at the spool of thread itself. In our case, this spool is in the 3rd row of thread, which means that we're going to go up through 3 eyelets here on our thread tree. So I'm going to start at the spool and take our thread, go up to the eyelets, and start feeding it through all 3 of them, one by one, as we move forward towards the rest of the machine. And now once I have it through all 3 of those, brings us to our pre-tension knob. And there is a small eyelet here on the upper left corner of our pre-tension knob that I'm going to stick the thread through. And on the pre-tension knob itself, I'm going to go over on the right side of the knob, in between the 2 metal discs, and then I'll keep coming down here. This will bring us to our thread tubes, which we're going to have to feed the thread through. And to do that, I'm going to use this threading tool that came in the toolbox, came with your machine. You'll notice that on this threading tool, one end is colored, usually either black or red, and there's a small notch that's cut into it. This will be used to wrap the thread around as we get ready to pull it through the tube. So to do this, I'm going to go to my thread tube and pop it out of its placeholder and let it just kind of hang down here, as this will make it a lot easier to get this threading tool through. I'm going to take the colored end and stick it up into the tube first, just until it starts sticking out the top. And once it's sticking up there, I'm going to take my thread and just start wrapping it around the threading tool. And I do this just so I know that it's going to get held by that notch. Again, that's cut into that threading tool. Then I'm just going to pull it through, and once it is all the way through, I'm going to release it, release the thread from this tool. I can set this off to the side, and then I'm going to just keep pulling the rest of my thread until it's all the way through. I'm going to pop this back into its placeholder then. Once that's back in place, we come to these silver clips. And depending on which needle I'm threading, I can push down on either the right or the left side. They're spring loaded. And so in my case, I need to push down on the left side and slide this thread underneath that clip and release it to hold that thread in place. This then brings us to our main tension knobs. And just like our pre-tension knobs, our main tension knobs are going to be threaded going around on the right side, in between those two metal discs, just going a half a time around. Then we come to these small posts, which are right underneath your main tension knobs. They're kind of hidden, which makes them easy to miss, but we always want to make sure and bring this thread over the top and down on the left side of that post. Be sure to always pay attention to that, as you don't want to miss it and lead to a poor thread path on your machine. Next we'll come down and we have these silver hooks. I'm going to feed it in on the right side into that hook, and that then takes us to our sensor wheels. To thread our sensor wheels, we're going to go over on the left side of this black post, and then I'm going to go up and over the white sensor wheel, and I'm going to go around one full time and then another half time around. It's important to always wrap it around 1.5 times, because anything less than that will lead to false thread breaks on your machine. Once we have that around 1.5 times, we come to these silver posts down here, and I'm going to go on the left side of that silver post. Now on this machine we have a blue cover here in front that I'm going to now open up and get it out of the way. And then we'll see more of these silver clips. Again, just like we did up top, I'm going to push down on the left side and release it, so that way that thread can slide underneath there and be secure. To give me a little less thread to work with, I'm just going to cut off this excess. And I'm going to bypass my take-up lever. I'm going to go directly past it here on the right side down to my check spring assembly, where I have these two rollers on top. On the right side of those rollers, there is a gap that I'm going to stick this thread down through, and that'll bring it down to my check spring. And then I'm going to thread my check spring from right to left. And then, just like I went on the right side of my rollers here, I'm going to go back up on the left side of those rollers. And now I need to thread my take-up lever. When I'm threading the take-up lever, I need to go from right to left. Stick it through there and then pull it down. And back to my check spring assembly, where I have a purple eyelet here down below that I'm going to stick that thread down through. And that's going to bring it out here behind this silver bar. We always got to make sure that the thread is going behind the silver bar, as anything different than that is going to lead to an improper thread path. So I'm going to bring it down and then down again through this next purple eyelet as well. Once I have it down there, we're ready to move on and start threading our needle. Now we're going to thread our needle. To do that, I'm going to come down here and make sure I have a clean edge. And then I'm going to start by going behind this small hook here that's right underneath our needle clamp. All I got to do is put a little bend in the thread and slide it back here so that it goes behind that hook. Then I'm going to thread our needle from front to back. I'm going to come back in front and go down through our silver presser foot. Once I'm down through our presser foot, we'll bring it up and pop it into this silver spring. as that'll hold our thread in place as we're getting ready to use that needle again. Once we have done all this and threaded up our needle, we can close our blue cover and we're ready to begin production once again on your embroidery machine.